Welcome to another episode of the Career Talks podcast. I'm your host each and every week, Orlando Haynes. I bring you amazing guests with amazing content and actionable advice to impact your career and life. And this week is no short of that. So super excited to have this young lady on. We connected a few years back. Then we paused, or I paused. And luckily enough, I was able to circle back and get her at the prime time at the launch of her new book, which I think is highly needed for both students in college, but not only students, but parents as well. So I'm super excited to bring Miss Beth Hedler Grunt on. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad we were able to connect or reconnect and have you on the podcast. We were talking just prior to this, and I'm super excited to hear more about the book, your business, and what you're doing in this space. So share with folks, who Beth is, your business, and your mission, really.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm Beth Hendler Grunt. I am the CEO and founder of Next Great Step. And our sole focus is to help college students and recent grads land the job that they deserve. And we really help them in two ways. One, to help them figure out their path and what they should do with the rest of their life. And once they get that clarity understood, we help them to then navigate the job search process in a way where they feel really confident. They know exactly how to go about it and be the one chosen to get the job that they're going after.
Now, let me just say this, Beth. That is a tall order, right? For college kids to really know what they want to do. Like, let's be honest. As adults, we sometimes don't figure it out until late in life. So, but I'm glad there's someone like yourself in that space doing what you're doing. So, super excited again for the conversation, folks. If you're tuning in, either on Beth's page or my page, say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have any questions as the conversation progresses, feel free to put them in there. And I'm sure Beth will be happy to answer them. So let me ask you this. Where did this passion come from for you to start helping college kids, land a career?
So I'm actually not a career coach by trade, but I think my career path led me into this. I started my own career actually in the tech sector and in sales and sales leadership. So I have a real passion for being able to convince someone that they need something that they didn't know they needed. And through that, I also led a lot of teams and being able to teach others how to do that. So that was the first 15 years of my career in the corporate world. And then I transitioned into the consulting world where I was working with CEOs and executives and helping them and their teams to improve their strategies and their sales performance. And one of the things that kept happening when I was in the consulting role is people would say, the executives would say, I would love to hire a young adult. I'd love to hire a recent grad, but I'm not going to because I don't have time to hold their hand. I don't have time to babysit. They don't fully understand the scope of the problems and the challenges that we're facing. And I'm going to hire someone that's more qualified. And I'm also of the age or became of the age where more friends would say, I don't understand. My kid went to a great school. They have great grades and they cannot get a job. And this idea, actually a colleague had brought this idea saying, what if we taught young adults the same thing that we're teaching these executives in a really simplified way? How do you have a strategy? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you articulate your value? And I was also at a juncture in my own career that I was ready to be an entrepreneur and not work for anybody anymore. And I said, let me try this and see how it goes. And I literally started with my friends' kids in my basement, testing out these ideas. And the response was really positive. They're like, we're not getting this guidance. I don't, this is something that I really need. And that's how the next great step was born.
So was I correct in stating that there is that, what's the word I'm looking for? Pathway of synergy between your helping parents understand on how they can help their students?
Absolutely. That's why I wrote my book. So as much as we are delivering our services and guidance directly to young adults, but I speak with hundreds of parents. By the way, I'm one of them. So I have a son who's a sophomore in college, and I also have a recent grad. So I am living this real time. I understand exactly the worries, the fears, and we really support everyone in that we're delivering, I guess, the service and teaching young adults. But I also felt so many parents come to us and say, I don't know. I haven't looked for a job in over 20 years. I'm not sure if I'm giving good advice. I'm not sure if what I'm telling my child is the right way to navigate it. They're telling me it's not. So I wrote my book, The Next Great Step, The Parent's Guide to Launching Your New Grad into a Career. So you can step your child through that process and really have a good sense for these are the tools that are working now, today. A combination, I'll say, of like old school of what we thought, and a combination of like, how do you navigate the technology, and where do you provide the guidance for your child.
Love it, love it. Yeah, I think again that is so needed now. Like you said, we may have some parents out there that have a little bit of a legacy thinking, still in the newspaper days, or thinking, right. Even if you fast forward, thinking job boards are really the source, the main source nowadays, and it's so much that's changed. But I love
Yeah.
the fact that you're bringing in the parents and educating them on making sure they're assisting, that navigation along with career services. They do what they can do, but they have that parent who's kind of up to speed. I think that's super helpful. So I love that a lot. Just like you, I have a daughter in college now, so she will be getting a copy
Good.
because you better land a job, baby, right after school. We don't want no delays. We don't want no delays. So let's dive into the book a bit, or as much as we can that you want to share with the folks. But absolutely purchase the book from Beth. Talk about some of the main principles that we're not aware of, like of parents.
Yeah. Well, the way I structured the book is really kind of two parts. The first part is understanding the problem from the perspective of like what parents are thinking, right? We have an expectation that when we send our kids to school, we say, well, they promised us on the college tour that my kid was going to have this great job when they finished, or we thought our kids would self advocate and go to career services or reach out to alumni. Like we thought all these things were going to happen, or we're like, oh, I'll just introduce them to a friend of mine. I'm sure it'll work out. So I talk about the expectations of what parents are thinking is going to happen. I talk about what students are feeling and what they think is going to happen, which is a little different. They're very intimidated. They're very afraid. They're concerned that they're not good enough. Even if they come from great schools or have great grades, they're just very easily discouraged if they don't hear back. And then I talk about what employers are expecting and what their expectations are. So kind of
Mhm.
laying out what is everybody thinking about this issue. And then the second part really is the solution, which is if you want to try to understand it, here is the step-by-step process that we teach with our clients. But if you can go through it methodically, as a parent, a guardian, your student, your grad can take a look at it and really dive into what are the pieces and the approach that you should do in a very systematic way that will yield the best result to getting that internship or that first job.
I love that you're hitting all three major components: child, parent, employer, and there's that synergy. We have Chanel who made a comment. Great approach meeting the students where they are and helping them prepare for a successful career path. Chanel, great comment, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Charnel.
So, with those expectations, can we peel back a little bit there? Because I want parents to really understand. And it's funny because we're in the career space, and there may be some things that we're not aware of, right? So that's why this book I think, is so helpful. I'm not going to sit here and think I'm an expert, but share a little bit of those things that we can, that may be unforeseen that we're not even thinking in terms of
Yeah.
expectations from parents.
Yeah. So one of the first things that I hear so many parents say, and their students, they'll say like, well, I told my, young adult that they should just apply to a lot of jobs, that it's a numbers game, and that the more that they apply, that the better yield that they'll have. And I know conceptually, and if you're like a mathematician or a stats person, that seems right. But I'm going to tell you that's not the case when it comes to this. And I'm sure you know this too, Orlando. It's really about take a step back before a resume is submitted, a job is applied for, before you make an introduction. The most important piece is, does your young adult have a clear sense of who they are and the skills that they have to offer an employer? Because so often they'll just be like, well, I'm a hard worker and I'm responsible. I'm like, well, that's great, but 10 other people are going to say the same exact thing. And that doesn't differentiate you. And I'm sure you have a lot to offer that maybe you're just not expressing. So the first piece in the process, if you want to sit down with the young adult in your life, is let's talk about what is it that you're really good at? What have you done? And by the way, it's okay if you scooped ice cream and delivered pizza, or you just volunteered at school. You don't need to have these fancy experiences. You're not supposed to, right? You're supposed to do this, go through college and try all these different things out. You worked in a team on a team project. But figure out what are those things that are real skills, like you're analytical, you're a writer, you know how to research, maybe you know how to sell, or you have great customer service skills, and come up with 3. I call them the 3 core skills. What are the 3 things that you're the most competent, most skilled at, and you really enjoy doing? And for each of those skills, help them figure out what's the story that you would tell someone. So assume no one had time to read your resume. They only have like 10 or 15 minutes to talk to you. What do you want someone to know about you that they don't know right now, but they're going to be really convinced of it based on this short story that you'll tell them? So if you're saying, hey, I'm really great at research, maybe talk about the time that you did research in a lab with a professor, or that you had to work on a project, and show how you helped the outcome. You know, what was the result that you impacted? Not that it was, of course, it was good for you and you learned, but how did you impact somebody else, or the business, or a peer, or the professor? And because people want to be able to connect the dots. If you can show that you did research and that created an impact for someone else, they're like, oh, well, maybe you could do that for me. And you can make an impact in my business with your research skills. So the clarity on skills and the story behind it is probably the most critical piece and the best starting point before you do anything else in the search.
So when you're talking to the parents, like you said, it could be those that have been not out of work, but haven't researched
Yeah.
or done a job search for 20 years, right? They're either retired or they're working full time and been in their career for a while. What tools are you giving them to say, hey, if he or she, your son or daughter, comes to ask you a question, you kind of know where to navigate them? Are there certain tools and tips you're giving the parents to help?
Yes, absolutely. It's the same tools that we give to the students as well. But
Okay.
yes, it's to ask questions. And I think
Hmm.
even taking a step back, sometimes, very often, our students come out of college and they're like, I know I studied this, but I didn't really love it, or
Hmm.
I'm not sure I want to do something with that. Now, of course, that's a hard conversation to have, because you're like, wow, we just collectively either, took out loans or made this investment for you to do this. But let's at least be honest and let them be honest with you about, I know I studied this, but this is the part of that I really want to focus on, or I really want to go in this direction. I think we need to really listen before we talk. And of course, I'm not perfect. I'm just as guilty as any other parent who wants to jump in and tell my
Yep.
kid what they should be doing. But I think having that conversation to really listen to what they're thinking, and then saying, okay, if this is the direction you want to head in, again, let's figure out what are the skills that you have that could potentially leverage you into those roles. This from there, it's okay, let's think about, we figured out your skills. What are the types of companies, or what are the kinds of jobs that use those skills? Now, how do you figure that out? Of course, people, will run to Google and type that in. But the other way that I really like is by using a tool in LinkedIn that I love, the alumni tool.
Mm.
So look at other people who had the same major, went to the same school. Maybe they graduated within the last 5 years. So they're in an entry level job. And if you just click on the icon of your university on your own LinkedIn page, it brings you to the university LinkedIn page. And there's a tab and you click on it, says alumni, and there's this phenomenal filter. It's free. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't know it's there. And you can filter like what year they graduated, what city they work in, what their major was, what their skills are. And you can find people with very similar interests who studied the same thing and it gives you all their profiles. And then you can reach out with a note saying, like you, I went to the same university and I'd love to talk to you to understand more about your role, how you got there, and some of the skills that you needed to be successful in your job. And that the targeted networking of people who are doing jobs that you're thinking about, that yields the most result, because as you know, people hire people, not an algorithm or an AI tracking system. People want to forge relationships because as soon as there is an opening or they know someone, oh, I just spoke to so-and-so and they were so impressive and they knew their skills and they reached out to me. Let me call them first before I put this job ad out there.
I think that was a quick cheat code right there at the alumni tab on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. So that's
Yeah.
super
That's
helpful.
one of my
Super
favorite.
helpful. So, what are the students that you come across talk to? Are they still optimistic? What are their thoughts on this current, I call it the career economy?
It's so interesting, especially right now, because obviously the headlines have been, crazy. You have a lot of these big tech companies that have pulled back. So people are thinking, the Amazon, the Meta, the Wayfair. But I think sometimes you get distracted by those headlines. There are still thousands of companies that need to hire. And I don't think the statistic has changed. I think there's 10 million job openings and there's 8 million job seekers. And that hasn't really moved very much. There's still more jobs than there are people looking for jobs. I think what we have to remember is your first job doesn't have to be the dream job, or forever job. Let's start with that.
Right.
You don't have to be there forever. You're going to learn and evolve and learn more skills that you can take elsewhere. You also don't have to work for this marquee name just because you're hearing, your friends that go to these big name companies. That's
Right.
not the end all be all. In some cases, you might get a great experience, and very likely at a smaller company or midsize. I think there's so much that they don't know. And there is fear and uncertainty. What is really just so interesting to me is that I am getting calls from people. I mean, we work with all students of all universities, all majors. But when I get the calls from the kids who are coming out of Ivy League and saying, I need help and I can't find, I'm just thinking like, I don't even know why we're talking, but
Right.
it kind of shows that it doesn't matter. And not to say that doesn't matter. Everybody struggles in this process, or once you're there, it's very competitive within. Or I spoke to a young man, he's a history major at Yale, and he doesn't want to be a teacher and he's not really sure what direction. Sometimes it's not always so clear. Just because you go to a certain school, it doesn't get solved for you. You still have to initiate and talk to people and network and figure out what works.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think we may still be in a time, and you would know because you have your finger on the pulse, that students or kids are still going to school based on parents' expectations, right? Or in the field specifically based on parents' expectations. So when it comes to certain sectors, not sure if you have a pulse on that. Are you seeing an interest from students that want to go more in tech or healthcare or whatever it may be, construction, whatever that industry is? Are you seeing any of that information or through conversation?
Well, I do see that, again, whether they want it or whether their parents encouraged it, they're like, oh, well, I want to be in engineering, or I want to be in coding. It's interesting too. A lot of, I'll say, my engineering clients are just, they're brilliant, but they have a really hard time speaking or articulating what they're thinking. So they might be amazing on the computer or, in a coding environment, but when it comes to expressing yourself, it's hard. And we're a country that looks to people to be able to at least express what you are thinking and so what. But I think we see all kinds of areas of interest. I mean, look, there is definitely that feeling of, well, maybe I should go to business school because this will yield, getting into finance, and those jobs are still highly desired and highly competitive. But sometimes I do see people just following the crowd because they don't know differently. They haven't really put in the time and the research, or they just feel like they're under a time clock of like, well, I just need a job. I just need any job. So let me just take it, even if it's really not the right thing for me, or I really don't like it. So I think, there's one other thing to consider too, is the class of 2023 is the first class that has been affected by COVID all 4 years. So COVID hit when they were freshmen.
Mm.
So, this is a tough one of like, you didn't have the same experience. You don't have practice talking to people and looking them in the eye and meeting in person. It's all these
Right.
other even like social skills tied to that process. So I think we still have our work cut out for us in helping young adults feel prepared and confident and ready no matter what field they pursue.
Wow, that's interesting that you yeah, wow, yeah. They're definitely got hit the most. So it's almost like it was stolen from them.
Mhm.
So they're really coming off as a disadvantage, unfortunately. But interesting that you also said that folks that are coming out of Ivy League schools are also trying to figure out their way and needing help.
Yeah.
Now, do you see that they're needing help finding a job that they know they want or still needing clarity in the direction they need to go?
Sometimes both. I mean, people
Mhm,
really come to us for really one of two ways. Either you just don't know what to do with your life, even though you've
mhm,
studied a certain thing, you either don't feel connected to it, or you don't know what to do with it, or you think you know what you want, but every effort that you've made to apply or get, you just can't even get in your foot in the door to get an interview. And then sometimes it's a combination where you think you know what you want, but you're only pursuing it because someone told you to go do it. You didn't really give yourself the chance of exploration. So it's those are the scenarios that we're seeing.
yeah. When it comes to the employer piece, because you said earlier, the three components really that three-legged stool is the students, parents, and employer. What are you communicating or educating the students about from the employer's viewpoint?
Yeah, employers, they want you to want it. They want you to be prepared. I think employers get very frustrated when they interview a candidate and the candidate says, "Well, I want to work here because like the answers are just not thought out." I
Hmm.
think it's frustrated where you have a tool like as simple as like Google, and just to like do a little research. Like they get frustrated, like, come on, it's not that hard to do some research on who we are and why you want to work here. I mean, you have to do that. I think the other thing is, and maybe I don't know if this is COVID related, but there's a lot of very almost like too informal. So sometimes if a candidate says, well, I saw like on the website or in videos that they're usually wearing like hoodies in their workplace, well, maybe I should come in casual too. And of course, I'm like, never do that. You always are the most dressed up person in the room, even if they're wearing a hoodie, because you don't have the job yet. So, or even forget even the physical attire, or just this general kind of laid back and not really prepared or just seem interested enough. So I guess they just get frustrated of like, you might be a really smart candidate, but you're not expressing it to me that you have what it takes. I think a lot of candidates forget that they actually have to sell themselves. You
Hmm.
actually do have to show how you're going to add value to the company. And I think that's the disconnect. The companies want to see that. They want to see, you know what, I've done my homework on you and I see your priorities are this, and I feel like I can help you in this way because of my skills and help you achieve your goals. I mean, that's what a company really wants. Very often our young candidates are saying, I really want this job because this will just be great for me. And I tell them, I'm like, that sounds really nice, but I have to say, nobody cares if it's great for you. It has to be great for the employer. And if it's great for you, nice. But
And
I
that
think we still have a little ways to go of bridging that gap between what candidates think they're ready for and what employers are expecting.
And I think what you're saying, it really is the low bar of entry, right? Which makes me think if you're in conversations also with the schools and the counselors in the career services department, are you seeing a gap in how they're developing their students? Is there a breakdown? Because at one point they used to be really good, right? First it was then it progressed and they were getting really, really sharp. As I used to visit universities all the time and still do. You can see the difference when a class comes in if they were talked to and prepped versus a
Mm,
class that wasn't. So, are
yeah.
you seeing any breakdown there or having those
I mean,
conversations?
this has been going on for a while. Look, I mean, I went to business school undergrad and then I got my MBA. Like, so I know in a lot of the business schools, they are prepping the kids, that they are really working on the whole process of how do you network and how do you interview. And in general, it's much more of their focus. But when you start moving into liberal arts or other parts of the university system, there's not always that same attention. and or universities are not investing in enough career resources. I mean, I know a university that has like 20,000 liberal arts students and there's only 16 career center advisors. I mean, that's not enough. They're not going to be able to give them the attention that they need. And I think it depends on the university. You know, some universities are not. The bigger issue is that it's not required to graduate in order to go to career services. And I've spoken with many heads of career services and they're frustrated themselves. They want to give more. They want to do more. Either they're limited by their budget because it's not considered a high profile, segment, or they can't force the kids to come. And likewise, a lot of kids will say, oh, I'll deal with that later, or I'll go later, or mom and dad will connect me later. And it's a combination, either they don't have a strong department, or even if they do have a strong department, the kids don't always show up to it. Mm-hmm. So it's a really tough situation, I think, until more universities require it, where you have either an internship or co-op as part of the curriculum, and you have to take a class or 2 or 3 about how this whole process works.
Right.
I've also seen in cases where the people in career services, they themselves haven't been in the workforce in like 20 plus years. So it's hard. They may not be current. I think it's just in general, there's a lot of different approaches at different universities, but the overarching feeling is I do hear from a lot of families saying they're disappointed with what it was, right? They keep saying, it's not what you promised me, or it's not what I thought was going to happen. And I'm trying to, bridge that gap for families who are struggling.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. There's such a gap in just giving students the basic fundamentals of professionalism. Obviously, you can't learn too much of business acumen. Sometimes that's innate, but some sense of it, right? They'll come speak to employers and ask employers to come and say, hey, here's what we're looking for. But I think, like you said, there needs to be a stronger onus on develop them professionally, so it's not a systemic problem of graduate, debt, can't find a job to pay it back. But they're promoting this great stigma or status of this school. Like you said, put Ivy League schools, that's where it's really going to be crazy. If you see a lot of folks graduating from the Ivy Leagues and they can't find anything, it's like, well, what was a $400,000 bill for?
Right.
Like,
I mean, the price is so astronomical now for college. It's like crazy, which, you start to people. And the other whole thing now is like, people start to question the value of college. Should you go get a certification? Should you just go to a boot camp and learn how to code? I mean, there's all of these things are on the table now.
It's insane. So when it comes to also now dealing with the students directly, let's zero in on them more. Are you seeing that they're having more? And I already asked about the optimism, but are you seeing some being a little more creative in their search? Like some of them are taking more, ownership and not relying on the career services department or anything. They're like, hey, I've done the research. I've found a plan. I just need a little bit of guidance on how to navigate these waters because it's brand new. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I hear you. I wish that was more the case. I think in many cases they don't have a plan and they're not sure because they thought that applying online would actually yield the results. Yeah. So what happens is when they usually come to us is like, they'll say, well, I applied to 10, 20. I mean, I've had people said they've applied to 100 to 200 jobs, and either they get a scam, which there's a lot of those out there, or they don't get an interview, or they get an interview, but it wasn't really something they wanted. Like when I say, well, what's your strategy or what's your process for applying? They're like, oh, I just pick like anything. So they're not even focused in on certain companies or industries. And I'm like, if you make it to an interview, they're going to figure that out. Because if you don't have a real clear like direction as to why I want this kind of company or this industry, it's going to be hard. And then I have many who say I've applied and I just can't get my foot. I can't even get an interview.
Yep.
So I think that's the general feeling, is that they think it's just going to be so much easier than they think. And it's just not. It's challenging.
So let's take a step back. I want to jump back and ask more of a personal question related to the book. You said you have a child that's graduated, one in college now. It's a junior. Where was that epiphany for you to say, I need to put this book together? Was it something you sensed in yourself, or just, again, being in the community and seeing the gaps?
Yeah, it's funny. I toyed around with it for a lot of years. I think it took me all the years. So I've been doing this now. 8 years was April 1st. And I think it just finally, I've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations and, the whole back and forth of like, I think there needs to be a book. I'll just start with that. I think what we're doing is kind of unique in that it's not off the shelf, like resume advice. I nothing wrong with that. I just feel like I think we have a unique process and it's yielding results where
Hmm.
I don't guarantee I don't guarantee a job, and 90% of our clients are getting the job that they want. So I'm like, there's something that we're doing that's working.
Yep.
And you kind of we have two audiences, right? I have young adults ages like 19 to 29, and then I have their parents who are very worried that they're going to be on the payroll for a long time and not enable them to retire and not get out of the basement. And I just felt based on the conversations and out of fairness, it's not that young adults wouldn't take a how-to book, but I think parents are a much more engaged party. Being one
Mhm.
myself, we're trying constantly to how can I help the situation? How can I help my kid? And I just felt that there was such a need. It was like the right time. I just felt like, and obviously between COVID happening and we actually exploded. I mean, we were doing well, but COVID really like catapulted us even more so. And I said, I think this is the right time to bring this kind of resource to families because they don't know what to do. And I'm able to bring it to, people who do financial planning or HR leaders or
Mhm.
universities. So it's really spanned kind of a large, broad audience. And I think, it's been well received. So I'm happy about that.
Awesome. Yeah, I can definitely see, if I can wave a magic wand, I would say you need to be in every university across the country to really have those conversations. You'll have some that have awareness, like some of the parents are kind of up to speed, but majority of parents are kind of like, "Hey, I had to figure it out. You need to figure it out. You better
Mm,
pass and find a job," and then have no clue what the market
yeah.
is, what's happening now. So, as you're building this, let's dive a little bit more into the book. What are some additional nuggets that you can share that we should be like chomping at the bit to know, like, wow, I did not know that.
So one of my favorite pieces of the book. So I talked about skills. So skills is like a
Hmm.
real like key section. But the other piece, there's a whole bunch of. I give a lot of value. I give a lot away of all day of my secrets. One of the things that I do, and I don't think people realize, is that every time you have a meeting with someone, whether it's an informational interview, a networking meeting, even your formal interview, that you need to have a plan. And I think so often, especially young adults and even us as adults, but like, oh, I'll just wing it. I'll just see what happens. Like, we'll
Hmm.
just kind of chat and we'll see what goes. But I have this structure or methodology that if you plan with this process, it will, I don't say guarantee, but pretty much high likelihood you will have a much better outcome than if you just like did nothing. And the outcome, the process is called the 3 A's.
Okay.
And the A's are this. The first A is action. So your meeting goes incredibly well. What one or two actions would you like the other person to do at the end of the conversation? If
Hmm.
everything went the way you wanted, what's the outcome that you want? I want you to hire me. I want you to refer me. I want you to agree to speak to me again. Like just write it down of what one or two actions are. And this is where we're planning now ahead of time.
Hmm.
Well, if they're going to do something, they have to actually believe something about you. So, what's the attitude that you want that person to have about you? I believe that you are a great writer. I believe that you know how to code. I believe that you know how to create a digital marketing campaign that yields, 1,000 new followers. Something.
Hmm.
So, what is it from your skills that you want to make sure that they are convinced of by the end of that conversation? And then you need to figure out, well, if I want to make an assessment whether I like this person or this job, what answers do I need? What answers to the question? So, what questions am I going to ask that will yield good answers? You want to ask questions that you can't find the answer to by going to Google. Things like, tell me how you measure success. How would you measure my success if I was in this role? What does the ideal candidate look like for you if you were to hire somebody new? What are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing right now in your business? And how do you see yourself overcoming them? So, giving them a real structure. And that's the planning process.
Hmm.
But when you meet in person or over the phone, over video, you ask your questions to get your answers first. You then convince them of the attitudes about you, tell them about your skills and the attitudes they should have. And then you ask them to say, based on what I shared with you, do you see that my skill set could be a good fit in your organization or in this industry? Great. Can you introduce me to so-and-so? Get them to take the action. And that simple framework of those 3 A's yields results over and over again every time. It's a sales technique, but you're the product. You're selling yourself. And that's, I think, one of the little bonuses I have in the book.
I love that because you outline it from action, attitude, answers, but you reverse engineer it once you're in the meeting.
Yes.
Love that. That's really good. So you're really driving folks to walk away saying, I need this person. I need Beth. The moment I walk out this door, that I need her to take action is to call me back in, make me an offer,
Right.
refer me to someone else, whatever it is. I need to make sure that they are leaving with an action plan. You may softly introduce it in the conversation or directly introduce it, but
Yeah.
to get them, to convince them based on your
Right.
attitude. Oh, I
Right.
like
Because
that.
how often do
That's
we
good.
go to a meeting and
Yeah,
someone
that's
comes
good.
back and I'll say, how did it go? And they'll be like, I think they liked me. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, that's good. Are they going to, what's the next step? I don't know. They said they would forward my resume on. I'm like, well, that's not really a lot, right? Liking you does not get you hired.
Right.
And I think if you can push people, people will do what you ask them to do. You just have to be really clear about what you need them to do. And obviously you have to be prepared for that conversation.
Got it. Now, is this a program set for an extended period of time that you put folks through? What is that framework?
So we offer both private and group coaching. They are 90-day programs. And everyone asks, well, am I waiting to look for a job after the 90 days? No, we're working with you through the process. We're teaching you during the first 6 weeks and more intensively, but we're really working with you through the entire process. So we have, tremendous success. We run groups all the time, and we have many private clients as well. And then we also do on-the-job training for those who get into the job and are looking to be successful and how to navigate that process as well. So it's been very successful, and very proud of what my team has done and what we're doing together.
So talk about that. Talk about the on-job training a little bit more. Yeah, share that.
So what we found is, obviously, getting the job is usually, the goal. Same way, getting into college is the goal, and then you realize, you got to navigate, college, and then you have to get out of college, you get the job. But just because you get the job doesn't mean you go to your desk and you put your head down and you don't talk to anybody. If you really want to make sure you're doing what you need to be doing and succeeding, you have to be able to manage your manager, and you have to understand what their expectations are. You need to know how you're being measured. You need to know how to network internally, so you get to know what other job opportunities are, and as you progress, of where you might want to go for yourself. So to me, it's just a continued progression of really learning how to be professional on the job, and being able to add value, and to listen, and to ask good questions, and to come into a performance appraisal prepared, that you've tracked your accomplishments, what you've done, what the impact you've made. So we really help our young adults be successful in navigating getting that promotion or moving into a new role. Even though you've had now work experience, how do you then take it and leverage it in a way that, again, makes you stand out over your peers?
Do you also have, maybe you thought about it, not sure, how are you involving the parents early on? Is that an initial kickoff call, or is there a section or something you can be like, all right, parents, we're going to get together and I'm going to walk you through what you need to be doing behind the scenes to support your student?
So what we do is, so we don't get parents on the kickoff call. What we kind of say is, like, if you've trusted us enough to invest with us, we've got it. We've got it from here. But what we will do is we're giving them updates. So we send them emails and let them know what they're learning and
Awesome.
what their new skills that they're acquiring. So they are updated behind the scenes. But I find that it helps to not have the parents on the same call, because sometimes their kid will disclose things to us that maybe they wouldn't say to mom or dad, or vice versa. So, we see ourselves as kind of the practice employers, but we're also parents. So I'm very sympathetic to making sure, we're just kind of another good mentor, someone that really also understands what it takes to be successful in the job and getting hired.
I love that. So they get a progress report, basically, kind of like kind of like they're in
Like a
school again.
report card.
Yep. Awesome. Saying, hey, they missed their homework. You might want to check with them. But
Yeah.
um, you touched on earlier the three core skills. Did we go deeper into all three? So I know, or
Well, the three core skills are it's those are individual, right? They can
right.
be for whomever. The most important piece is it's just not a you want it to be an actual skill versus saying like I'm responsible or I'm helpful or I'm hard worker. I want you
Mhm.
to actually dive into like something that you know how to do that's a true skill. I can write, I can research, I can code, something that's, more tangible. And as much as you can tie a metric to it of how you did it or how it impacted with some kind of, metric or volume of things that you did, that's really helpful.
What are some of the success stories that students that are sharing with you midway through the program? What are some of those? Because you touched on whether it's a new skill, they're learning something new, and those reports are going out to the parents saying, "Hey, here's where they're at." Um, what are you hearing back directly from the students saying, "Oh my God, Beth, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for that."
One of my favorite stories is I had a student who was really skeptical when he joined. Now we don't have anyone come in because mom or dad puts them in there. Like they have to agree. There's no
Mhm.
like doing this behind their back. You have to want it. He wanted it, but he was dragging his feet and he said, but none of my other friends needed this kind of program to get a job. He's like, I don't really know why I need this. And I said, okay. I'm like, I'm not forcing you. You don't have to do this. But he's like, no, I'm going to do this because I really want a job. And I think once he kind of saw the methodology of the clarity on skills and knowing how to reach out to people and knowing how to network, and then we also really prepped them intensely for interviews. And he came back and he actually got like a phenomenal internship, I guess to the point where the company he was working for was a media company and he got his like face on a billboard in Times Square.
Wow.
And he sent me the picture and he said, I have to share with you. I didn't understand initially how this all worked. He's like, but I am so confident. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly how to talk about myself. I know exactly how to target the right companies and the right people and what to say and to whom. And he's like, and for that, I'm grateful. And I got this great job. So to me, what I feel like we enable is a lot of confidence.
Hmm.
Is,
Hmm.
can you piece it together? Can you go to YouTube or wherever and find lots of experts? There's people out there. I think we're just breaking it down in such a way that we kind of do like one piece at a time. We're not throwing everything at them. We're like, let's start, A, then B, then C. And there's a reason that you're not going to do your resume until much later in the program, or that you're not getting to interviewing until much later in the program. Because if you don't
Mm.
understand who you are and the value that you can bring, you're going to be spinning your wheels the way you have been. So let's just like pause and you have to take a step backwards to move forward. And I think that's why we're able to just really there's like no stone left unturned of every single scenario or piece of information or type of letter that they would need. And we give that to them.
So you're giving them not only the soft skills training, you're really giving them strategy. Like
Yeah.
that's it's not just strategies for a job search, but that's an actual skill that they
Yeah.
may not even know that they're developing. So it's like, okay, yes, I've learned how to search for a job and how to target now, but this is a skill that I can apply in my career. I know how to do the R&D, the research, put
Yeah.
together something and narrow it down and get real laser focused. So I think that's super, super huge where there may be some coaches out there that will do a lot for them. How much are the students, it sounds like they're doing a large portion of the work. um, is it something you'll give them homework to say, hey, give me your top five and then tell me?
100%. Yeah. So we are facilitating, but I'm not going to tell you this is what the career you should be doing. This is
Right.
the job. So that's not our role. Our role is really to coach and facilitate, to give them the tools and the resources to know how to do it. And what I say is it not only helps them get the first job, but the second and the third, that you're going to use this for the rest of your career, because we're going to teach you the actual, it's almost like the class that you should get in college that you're not getting, about how do you navigate that process.
You might need to write a curriculum, Beth. I don't know.
I know, but we
A lot of work.
it's another story.
It is. Awesome. So what's the feedback? Same question earlier. What's the feedback from the parents?
I mean, parents are just relieved, right? That I mean, because that's our thing. I know that feeling of like you're just worried and you don't know what's going to happen, and you want them to be successful, but you also want them to be happy. You don't want them to be, stressed. And I think there's just a lot of relief that not only are their young adults so clear and confident about their direction, they also see that now it's yielding results, and it makes, it impacts everybody, because if you can have a young adult who has employment and potentially move out of the house or at least contribute to the house, it just, yields a lot of, reduces the stress. So that's the number one thing I think we're giving to parents.
So are you staying niche with the kids, or are you looking to open up, what you might be doing for adults as well? What do you think?
So people ask me this. I have a lot of parents and can you work with me? I think there's just there's such a need in this space that
Mhm.
right now I'm sticking to where we're at. I think it's just something that I think we've figured out. And not to say that I couldn't help, different demographics, but we're really staying with like the college, and like we start from sophomore year to about 5 years out post grad, and that's our sweet spot.
Okay. Okay. Good. 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 That's awesome. So I want to be mindful of the time. What's next for next great step?
What's next? So I'm always looking and evaluating of what our next thing, whether it's more speaking, just getting the message out to a wider audience, which is really why I wrote the book, because I just really wanted to bring the tools and resources to many more people, just provide more access, and working with in a lot of different organizations, whether it's in the corporate world, whether it's in the financial world, the university world. So all's good. We're just kind of exploring all opportunities that come to us. So I'm really excited about how well the book has been doing and our business continues to grow.
And share a little bit about that, because I've seen it, because I follow you on LinkedIn. I believe I've seen you on the news channel, local news channel as well. So the book is catching massive traction, because just the topic alone has tremendous value. And now understanding the program and what students are going through, in the partnership you're creating, getting their parents involved, from just support the system and understanding what they're going to go through. And I love that, that you're giving the progress reports. That's so cool. So share with folks the journey in which that book has taken you, and the impact it's starting to make.
I think it's just enabling us to really get the message out to so many more people. I think it's a real. I mean, I talk about it. There's like a crisis in our
Mm,
country of young adults
yeah.
who don't have clarity on where they want to go. They're in tremendous debt, and they are told that I know I'm supposed to go to college, or I know I'm supposed to do these things, but I don't know how to do this, or I don't know how to get myself, from point A to point B. And I really see us as one of the hopefully solution points that helps that. And yeah, the book has really enabled me to get that message to many more people. And I've had the very good fortune of being able to get on, national TV news and the Wall Street Journal and New York Times. So it's been, I'm just really proud, and that we're able to help many more people. And the more people that know, the more people that we can support, and or at least get the book in their hands so they can have a tool to help them and help their families navigate through this process.
Awesome. Two more questions, Beth, and then I'll let you get back to work to helping those kids. Um, First question is, what gets you up to do what you do?
I have always thrived on knowing, kind of goes back to my sales days. Like I love sales, and I love, first of all, being able to share something, a solution that we have. And I love the sales process. I love selling our services because I feel so passionate
Hmm.
and so confident about how we can deliver an outcome. But I love teaching others how to sell and how to sell themselves. And that's what the program also really focuses on, that as well, as not just me, but I have a phenomenal team of advisors that works with me. And the fact that we can teach a young adult who lacked confidence, didn't think they had anything to offer, to all of a sudden be able to shift that and be able to show that they have so much to offer and present it in a way that's so compelling. That's what gets me out of bed. It just like, there's no better feeling than knowing when we see that light bulb go off and they're like, they can't even believe how good they sound or how impressive they are. I'm like, it's amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, share with folks. This is the last question. Share with folks where they can connect with you, uh, get into your program, get your book, etc.?
Absolutely. So you can, we are on every social media platform, but if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. And it's just my name, Beth Hendler Grunt. You can come to our website, nextgreatstep.com. You can learn all about our services. You can read about a lot of the content that I write. I write a blog. But if you're interested in talking to learn more about how we help young adults, there's a button there that says Let's Talk. And we offer a complimentary consultation to parents, to students. We can do the call together, and we'd love the opportunity to speak with you. And of course, you can get the book, The Next Great Step, The Parent's Guide to Launching Your New Grad into a Career. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere books are sold. And I'd be so grateful if you want to check it out.
Awesome. Beth, I so appreciate it. Again, thank you again for sticking with me to circle back to get you. Actually, it was the right timing, right? Your book is coming out and it's catching traction just because the value is tremendous in what your organization is doing. So congratulations on all the success and the impact you're making here. Folks, we are going to make this a wrap. If you want to learn more, you got to follow Beth. We're not going to give you no more. You got to connect with Beth.
Awesome.
You got to connect with Beth. Get your kids over to her. I share with her. I have kids. I have 6 daughters. They will be getting a book for sure. Even though I'm in the space, I need help. You just never know. No one's an expert in this space. So I appreciate you so much. I'm going to close this out with a quick video. Any last parting words for the folks?
You know what? Everybody has a talent and a value and skills, and we just got to find that within for each of our kids. So they got it in there. Just got to give them a little support.
Awesome. Hold on for me, Beth. We'll see you next time, folks, here on the Career Talks podcast.